Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pathfinder presented by Payload, the leading digital media company in the space industry. Our guest today is Anousheh Ansari, a remarkable individual who's devoted her entire life to moving society forward. She was the first Iranian-American astronaut to travel to the International Space Station, and is also the CEO of the XPRIZE Foundation. Now, this is the famed nonprofit organization that designs and manages public competitions intended to encourage technological development that could ultimately benefit humanity. The first XPRIZE was launched in 1996. This was a $10 million prize that was awarded in 2004 to Scaled Composites Spaceship One. Now, this is the tech that underpins Virgin Galactic's launch system. So we have a lot to discuss, including a lot of the new XPRIZE Foundation challenges. So let's dive right in. Anousheh, welcome to the show. Very excited to have you.
Great to be here.
So you've had an incredible career. And before we jump into talking about XPRIZE, I do want to start with yourself. So you moved from Iran to the US as a teenager. Why don't we start there? What was that initially like? And what was that initially like for you and your family?
It was a big change, as you can imagine. You know, being a teenager is awkward enough, and then moving to a whole new country, new culture, new language. I didn't speak English, and just getting adjusted was difficult. Add on top of that, I was from Iran. It was after the hostage crisis and the revolution in Iran, so Iranians were not looked at in a best of light. So just being a teenager in high school with all of that, baggage, it was very difficult. The first year I was ready to go back.
Right. I see you're wearing a space t-shirt today. So were you always interested in the space industry, even when you were back home in Iran, or was that something you developed once you were here in the States?
No, it was a childhood dream. Since I was 6 years old, I wanted to go to space. I was fascinated with the stars, and actually that's the reason I got interested in math and science and physics especially. I was fascinated with the formation of the universe, cosmology, and how everything came to be. And I felt like by answering some of these big questions, I will get to the answer of what am I doing here? What's my role here? So this sense of exploration of space was with me from very early age. And when I got the opportunity to come to US, that's when I felt like for the first time I had a real chance to pursue it. Of course, the traditional way of going and applying to NASA to become an astronaut was not a big option for me, given all the other baggages I described. But nevertheless, it was something that I kept the dream alive inside me and figured that I'll find a way. I'm here, I'll find a way. So, and eventually I did, fortunately.
So Anousheh, you like myself, have a bit of a non-traditional background in how you entered the space industry. Tell me a little bit. So you moved to the U.S. from Iran. Did you jump right into the industry, or what did you do before you eventually became an astronaut?
Yeah, so I had to first finish high school for the first year, and then I went to college. I studied electrical engineering and computer science. At that time, I had just arrived with my mom and sister. We didn't have any money, so making sure that I can get a job quickly and start supporting us was important. So computer science, electrical engineering was a big field, growing, lots of jobs. So that's where I ended up. And, my choices were between astrophysics and engineering. And engineering seemed to be a better career choice at that time. So that's where I ended up and built a whole career around, this field, specifically working in the telecom industry. I started working for a few companies at the beginning of my career where I learned a lot about the industry, and then met my husband, and we started a tech company in telecom and writing softwares for the telecom industry. And that's became sort of my life for a better part of 15 years. And the success in that area is what eventually allowed me to get into the core of my passion, which was space. But the experience was something that helped me become an entrepreneur, and something that I carried on. So Peter actually read one of the interviews I did when I sold the company. And in the interview, I talked about how I wanted to go to space, and this was my passion. So he decided that I need to go find this person and tell her about the prize. And he did. And he came, visited me and my family, and explained the prize and what he was trying to accomplish. And I immediately loved the idea, because by that time I was an entrepreneur, and what he was describing was a way that not only I could, make my dream come true, but I could also play a role in really starting up a whole industry. And the other reason that it made sense to me, because as an entrepreneur, I know how difficult it is to build things. And usually you go hire a team and you pay them for 5, 6, 7, how many number of years. And you may or may not end up with what you originally wanted to do. So I was thinking that, oh, this is an amazing way of, solving problems or creating complex things, because you basically, instead of hiring one team, you tell the world, go build this thing. In this scenario, build a spaceship. And then, once you build it and you fly it, not once, twice, so it works, then that's when you get paid. Like, this is wonderful. Why don't we do more of this in the industry, different industries? Right. So my family and I became sponsors of the first competition, and that's how I joined XPRIZE as a board member, and I've been involved for past 29 years. And 4 years ago, the board asked me to join as the CEO of the company, and now I've been working as a CEO and really setting us up for scaling, which has been an amazing opportunity for me. So super excited.
So when Peter asked, or when you and your family sponsored XPRIZE, had you gone to space yet at that point?
No, it was back in 2000, and I had dreams of it, but never thought it would come true. But XPRIZE played a role in that as well, because the prize was won in 2004. We had 26 teams from around the globe competing. The winning team was a U.S. team from Mojave. Bert Rutan was the designer. The amazing Bert Rutan was the designer of Spaceship One, which won the competition. And then Paul Allen funded that. And Sir Richard Branson licensed that and built Spaceship 2. For 7-passenger version of it. And what we saw was the success of looking at the 10 million, which was the original prize purse, bringing about $100 million worth of investment from all these teams from around the globe. And then the winning team becoming a company, Virgin Galactic. And then Virgin Galactic went public in 2019, and they fluctuated between $1 billion to $9 billion in different points of time. But it was an amazing success. And in 2004, the prize was won. 2005, we had a big celebration for the first anniversary. And that's where I got the opportunity to go and train as a cosmonaut with the Russian Space Agency. And the space cadet that I am, just the opportunity to be with in the same room with the other astronauts and cosmonauts, and actually go train where, the whole space travel, human space travel got its footing, and where Yuri Gagarin trained, that whole experience was incredible to me. So I immediately said yes. And ended up going to Russia and training, and then flew in 2006 to International Space Station.
So you became the first Iranian-American astronaut. So tell me a little bit about what that meant for the country. Obviously, it was widely covered by the media at the time. And given everything that's going on in that country, and in your country, like how was it perceived? I'm curious, and how did you feel? How did you feel about it?
Yeah. So it was actually really well received, especially by young people in Iran, but by everyone. And, Iran right now has about 80 million people, and they're highly educated, a lot of them in the technical fields. And usually in the news, especially at that time, you didn't hear anything good about the country. So the fact that I was flying and I portrayed something positive about Iranians was, of course, a wonderful thing. And I wanted to use the opportunity to highlight that, if you look at the people of different cultures, countries, backgrounds, we're all the same at the end. We all want the same things. We have the same aspirations. I wanted to use my flight as an opportunity to unite. And I ended up writing a blog from space. It was the first blog from space. At that time, there was no social media. It was a long time ago. No social media. And I never written anything. And it was, NASA usually doesn't allow anyone to communicate directly to the public. So they were very wary of it, but we convinced them. Peter helped a lot. And I was able to write about my experience as a human being in space. And it became very popular, and people from all over the world started reading it and writing back. I think by the time I came back, and 2 months after that, there were about 20 million hits on the blog, that people were reading it and following it. And it became a way of communicating a different face of space travel. It was from a non-professional astronaut. It was talking about the fact that I'm fascinated with Velcros all everywhere. The space station, everything you need to have a Velcro, and how my lip gloss flew out of my pocket, and talking about my emotions and things that astronauts don't talk about, because they were supposed to be these macho, strong people. And not talk about feelings and emotions, and that's what the public was interested to learn. So it became very popular, and a lot of young people, especially from Iran, from all over the world, young women from around the world, started writing about how this story has inspired them to go after their dream and be able to pursue things that may be seemingly impossible. And to me, that was the best, reward that I could get for, being able to communicate with the world. It didn't matter that I'm first or second or the 1,000th person who went, but the fact that this opportunity gave me a reason to communicate with the rest of the world and inspire so many young people to go after their dream was the best gift.
So it's widely discussed, this concept of the overview effect. When you're up in space and you see the Earth, it gives you this completely different perspective about the Earth and how fragile it is, and it psychologically really impacts people. There's that famous clip of William Shatner when he returned after the New Shepard flight, where he was talking to Jeff Bezos, and he was tearing. And anyway, so I know different people react, and it's impactful for folks in different ways. But for you, what was that like? You've obviously achieved this lifelong dream, and you're up there, and I think you were there for what, 8 or 9 days?
11 days in space, 9 days on station. Yeah.
Okay, so call it 11 days in space. When you first saw the Earth and the way it was, how did that make you feel? Did that change anything about your perception of the world?
Yes, absolutely. It's not something you can just go by without really letting it affect you. So I was still in the Soyuz capsule. So I was in the tiny capsule. It was like maybe 20 minutes after the flight, and we reached orbit and everything checked out. So I was able to open the seat belts, and then I flew up to the porthole that was next to me. And for the first time, I could see Earth from space. And I had seen pictures, my entire adult life and childhood. And because I surrounded myself with pictures of space, but seeing it with my own eyes had such a deeper effect on me. And it's sort of everything that, becomes real at that moment. And I could feel and sense this energy of life, and the beauty of our planet was just overwhelming. And so I started crying, and then my teardrops started floating in front of me, and I started laughing because of that. And then I was crying again, and I was laughing. It's like my crewmates probably thought I'm completely nuts. But it was a beautiful image, and you talk about the overview of it becomes so apparent that we fight over nonsense, basically.
Right.
Because all those crazy things that we worry about, we fight over, sort of disappears from that vantage point. And you see our interconnectedness. You see how we're not only connected to each other, but this is our world, and it's a fragile world. There's like this very thin layer that you see that is the only reason life exists on this planet, the atmosphere we have. And you know that, and you see how small it is. It's like, oh my God, that's the difference between life and no life on this planet.
Right.
And it's the only planet around. You look around, everything else is dark, and this is the only place with all these colors and life. So it's overwhelming. It changes the way you see life, and it changed what I prioritize in my life.
So let's channel some of that energy and talk a little bit about XPRIZE, right? Because XPRIZE started off as this initiative challenge for commercial space and commercial space tourism, right? Now, XPRIZE has since graduated and evolved from there. So maybe talk a little bit about what is now the mission of XPRIZE. What are the types of challenges that you're working on right now? Like, what's the goal, and what are you trying to incentivize? Because it worked for Spaceship One, and I'm sure it's remarkably exciting to see Spaceship One evolve into Spaceship Two and Virgin Galactic, and now Virgin Galactic is now sending, has a revenue generating commercial space tourism business, which is very exciting, and that evolved from the very beginning from XPRIZE. So maybe talk a little bit about what is ultimately the mission of the organization.
So the mission of XPRIZE is to build an equitable world of abundance for all of us. And it's a big, audacious goal. It's in the tradition of doing big, audacious things at XPRIZE. And what we saw is the success of the competition demonstrating how we were able to bring, 10 times more in capital investment in an area no one was investing. The policy changes that we were able to do to really spur this whole new commercial space industry, the awareness we created around this, and the fact that we were able to attract teams and really crowdsource building rockets, basically, and bring teams from all over the globe. It was an indicator that we can apply this model to now other challenges. So we work in 7 domains. We identify grand challenges in 7 domains where we design XPRIZes around with our ecosystem of brain trust members. The space and exploration is always a big part of it for us. We're working on a space debris removal right now, for example, in space. We have a climate and energy domain work, which is very active, and we have a $100 million carbon extraction competition at gigaton level. So this is to accelerate technologies out there to be able to address this need that we have. By 2050, we need to be removing gigatons of CO2 from our atmosphere or the oceans. And this is a competition to address that need. We have a biodiversity and conservation area of work, and we have two active competitions. One is a rainforest competition to preserve the biodiversity of the rainforest, and one that we recently launched, and it was delayed because of COVID, because we couldn't get the funding, but it's so much needed, and that's the wildfire competition. And we've seen recently how wildfires have devastated US, Canada, and Europe and other parts of the world. And this competition is basically to detect fires from space or from on-the-ground detection points, and then determine whether it is a destructive, dangerous fire or not. And if it's determined to be a destructive fire, to put it out within 10 minutes. We hope to put an end to wildfires with this competition. And that's another one that we're very excited. We've launched it about 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago, and it's going to be active for 3 years. So very excited about that. And then we have a learning and society where we look at future of work, learning, and our society is evolving. We have a health domain area of work. We have an active competition in that area regarding alternative proteins for white meat. And then we also have a deep tech, quantum, AI area of work, and food wastewater. Those are all 7 domains.
So I want to just touch really quickly on the wildfire piece, because it is something that it has become such a mainstream topic of conversation. Like, so I live in New York City, and I want to say about a month ago, there was maybe like a month and a half ago, there was this, the wildfires from Canada, the fog and the smoke, got down to New York City, and, it went as far as down as Washington, DC. But there was all these images, right, of like the city and the orange, obviously you've seen them, like orange hues, and it felt like something out of a science fiction movie. And everyone was like, what is going on? And it feels like the apocalypse, right? There's all these things, but it's I think for the first time, and as a New Yorker, right, I've heard about wildfires growing up in California, tons that happen almost every year. There was a really bad one just, 3 or 4 years ago from the PCG, the utility company related one. So like, obviously, like, you hear about it, but it's never something that you feel like is close to home. And when the wildfire in Canada occurred, I think for the first time, like, it became such a mainstream part of the conversation, at least on the East Coast, where people are like these wildfires are crazy. So like, I think it's just it's such an interesting time to be launching an initiative around that. And I'm curious, like, really 2 questions, like, how do you decide what challenges are worthy of an XPRIZE, right? Because there's so many things that can be solved out there. And I think in my mind, you have to kind of balance, like, well, is the technology ready to solve this challenge, right? And if so, then maybe it makes sense. But like, I don't want to assume, right? How do you think about, like, what is the right next challenge to take on?
That's a really good question. And wildfire is one that we've known for a while. We wanted to do a wildfire competition. It's interesting because we started fundraising for this a year before COVID happened. And initially everyone's like, but this is not a global problem. It's mostly a California problem. Are you doing
right.
this because of California? Because our headquarters was in California. But we could see that because of climate change, this is a problem that's going to be spreading. And it was already spreading. Not everyone knows. And this is another area XPRIZE is good at, is creating awareness. But that it's a problem if we don't handle, it's going to get worse and worse. So this is this is one of the criteria we use to identify the problem. So to look at if there is a problem that is going to impact millions, tens of millions or more, and if something is being done that's effective. So whether there are governments doing something, the private sector, whether there is enough being done. Sometimes you see things done, for example, in the carbon scenario, there were companies building solutions, but no one was daring to push their technology to gigaton. So prizes are good. XPRIZE specifically, we look what we call audacious but achievable. So we look at where we are today and where technology needs to move to. And if it's not moving fast enough, that's where an XPRIZE can accelerate innovation by putting a very specific target, a goal. You need to reach this number, this price point, this energy footprint by this time frame. And that's where then it focuses the energy of innovation of those out there to really take the risk, take those big leaps to get to that. So that's also very important criteria for us. We also look for areas where it's complex. It's a problem that's complex and it requires different expertise and different parts of the industry to come together so that there's an integration factor. So wildfire is a good example where, people were working on sensors and detecting, and some people were working on AI part of it, and some people were working on solutions to actually suppress fire very quickly. But they were not working together, they were not coordinating, and that, there were not enough of them working in this direction. So for an XPRIZE to exist, this was another, important criteria. And when we launched this, we saw immediately different parts of the industry coming together and trying to align and partner together to win the prize. So the prize brings this opportunity of collaboration and partnership and integration of different solutions together. And as long as we can set a target that's very clear and measurable, that there is a big problem that needs to be solved and is not being solved, capital is not going there, awareness not going there, XPRIZE will be a good way to solve it. And we've created these ecosystems of brain trust experts, scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs, investors around each domain, and they get together. We've developed a very rigorous methodology that over 120 days, we go through this with our experts and come up with a series of ideas and select the top 2, and then we get working on fundraising for it. And as soon as we have a sponsor for any of those top ideas, we try to launch them.
So Anousheh, I want to talk a little bit more about the brain trust. So who are and I don't know how much of this is public or not, but to the extent maybe you can at least share like the profiles of the folks that are on the brain trust, and how do you decide on who's in that room to make these decisions? Because some of these ultimate challenges and what they lead to are ultimately very impactful, right, for society. So how do you decide who's in that room, and then how does a challenge even come up, or how does it even get decided that this is something you're going to even discuss or have a conversation about?
Sure. First of all, it's not a secret. The Brain Trust members are on our website in each domain, so you can go and see who's on there. And if you're interested to join, send us a note. So it's not a secret society, no secret handshakes. But definitely, we look for people who are have expertise in the domain, of course, whether it's through academia or entrepreneurship and expertise in building solutions in the domain. We have science fiction writers that we are very excited to include in our brain trust. And people, investors as well. The reason for this diversity is because when we are coming up with solutions for an XPRIZE, the solution has to be something that will actually be able to go to market and be able to succeed in the market. Because if it's a lab experiments, then it's not solving a problem. We need it in the world. We need it active, working successfully in the world. So all these different aspects of making sure it's affordable, accessible, those what we call equity principles of it, that it's sustainable energy sources, that the price point is right, that the technology is audacious enough that it will actually solve the problem. It's not just scratching the surface or looking at the symptoms of a problem, but rather the cause of the problem. So all these things are things that's discussed through the 120 days that I described. But what we start off is with a vision. So we try to describe the vision of the domain, whether, let's say, health. So we pick 2045 and say, in 2045, what would abundance and equity and abundance in health look like here on Earth? And describe that in scientific terms. So you have a very clear target of what you're looking for. Like, nobody's dying from chronic diseases, nobody's dying from cancer. So you can describe this very specifically. And then we look at where we are today and how we're moving toward that future. Are we moving in that direction, or are we moving in a different direction? And what we need to do to change course to make sure we hit our target. What barriers do we have to overcome? What breakthroughs do we need? And that's basically what we work on with our brain trusts, identifying them, and then through that process, identify what innovations we need to accelerate and which ones are already happening and which ones need a nudge from XPRIZE, need an injection from XPRIZE to actually accelerate and happen sooner. And that's how we come up with the prize ideas. This process, we call it a roadmap. So we're working now and we're fundraising to actually create these comprehensive roadmaps that we can publish to the world and make it available so from scientists to non-scientists can benefit from this information and provide input, help us make it better over time, and we'll adjust them every year as new things happens in the world that may change that direction.
Are there any challenges or ideas that the committee ultimately decided not to pursue that you wish you did pursue?
No, actually, I can't think of any off the top of my head. There's one that I personally would benefit from, but I understand that it's not top of mind from everyone. I travel a lot, and I love to see a faster way to travel. We call it New York to Paris, in 2 hours or less. So it's an area that I think eventually, if we can achieve it with low cost and low energy or sustainable energy, it will benefit our climate issue as well. But usually the ideas are all good. So we hope we start with lots of ideas. We get down to top 10, and then from the top 10 we go to top 2 ideas. But we don't throw them out. So ideas will stay on the roadmap. It's just a matter of time when we find that intersection of interest from the public and interest from sponsors to be able to launch those prizes. Eventually, we hope to launch all of them and have at least 2 active prizes per each domain.
Does XPRIZE take any type of or plan to build a system where you can take equity positions in the companies that are involved in the challenges, almost like combining the foundation aspects of what you're working on with like some type of accelerator type system that allows the investors also to get financially involved with the companies?
So we do get so the teams keep their IP. We don't benefit from their IP, and it's a big part of why XPRIZE works. However, we've had companies who've IPO'd and have been successful, and we hope that even though we haven't dictated anything from an equity position, we hope that the entrepreneurs who compete will pay it forward and maybe share some of that wealth created or the shares of the company or solution with XPRIZE, even though it's not mandated. We are experimenting with different ways of maybe creating different pockets with the prize purse. So there's a portion that's non-dilutive capital, but also an investment portion that comes with the prize as well. And we can't force people to take the investment, but it will be there. So if they want access to that other sum of money, that it will be there and they would be able to access. But regardless of that, we help the teams fundraise. We hold investor summits for them, and we connect investors and the teams. As we're trying to make our work more sustainable, also we're looking at models where people who benefit from us creating that ecosystem and connection that they will include us in their future profits, and help us create a sustainable model of fueling other competitions to make the world better.
So I am curious, let's kind of go through the arc of one of these challenges, right? From like sort of start to finish. And let's use, we talked about the wildfire example, like let's maybe use that as an example. So you're about to launch, I think the launch date is like a week from now, if I'm not mistaken, right? In terms of like when applications are closed?
We've launched it already. So the applications.
It's launched already, okay.
Yes, we've launched it. So let's talk about the arc. So we design a prize, we get the sponsor, and then we have a launch. And what a launch means is we make a public announcement, whether in person or virtually, and our website opens up for teams to register. And then our team, we have a dedicated team for each prize. Usually it takes between 3 to 5 years to win a competition. They're anywhere between, tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. And the prize purse gets distributed over this 3 to 5 years. So it's not that if it's $100 million, all goes to one person at the end. We want to make sure that we seed the industry. So usually within the first year, there's some small amount that goes to the top, let's say 50 or 100 teams. And then there's another gate about a year before the competition is ending to seat the top 5 to 20 teams at that point. And then we go to the finals. And usually we have a prize for the first place, second place, and third place, and sometimes bonuses as well. So we want to distribute as much of this capital to different parts of the teams and make sure that they stay in the competition throughout. So even if you don't win the money up front, that we want the teams to continue to the end point and participate in the semifinals. We have launched the competition now. The October date is a deadline for registration because we're getting ready for testing. So the teams who want to basically be considered for the testing, that we need to have all their information. The first stages are usually paper submission ideas, not just, very high level, but very detailed technical proposals. And we have third-party judges. They go through that, proposal to see it's valid. It's not breaking the laws of physics. It's actually viable solution that is thought through. And that's the minimum qualification to be considered for the competition. And then the rest is actually demonstrations, sometimes simulations for the initial stages. And then by the time you get to the end, you have to actually physically have built the solution, demonstrate, and show that you've met the criteria, the 5-6 specific things that you need to demonstrate. So in this case, we have 2 tracks for wildfire. We have a space track. So there will be a demonstration from space side detection, and there's a ground-based detection as well, and then the suppression part.
So as part of the challenge, it's not just detection, but it's also innovation around suppression. Like, so each participant needs to come up with both, right? Detection and suppression.
Yes. And it's what we see sometimes. Again, there are teams who have the technology, let's say, for just detection or technology for suppression. And we have seen companies who say, we'll make our solution available to any team, and then we'll take, 30% of, for example, the winning. If the team wins, instead of competing as a team themselves, they make the technology available to any team who wants to work with them. And there are times that just 2 companies partner up very tightly together and become one team to have a comprehensive solution. And we encourage that. We're best matchmakers. And we matchmake teams and team members together, or someone says, I'm missing this expertise, or we need testing partners, manufacturing partners. We have amazing group of partners in the industry, and we're always looking for more and growing it. So we can give in-kind services to our teams, and also in-kind services for testing, which brings the cost of overall operation down for us.
Have you ever thought about crowdsourcing the challenges?
Yes, so there's two parts to it. We were talking about our process of ideas for competition. We start those 120 days by a call for ideas. So we put out a call to the world to send us your best ideas for a competition we should do. So we feed that through the process of going with the experts around. So that's one way we get the public's opinion on what we should work on. And the other side is crowdsourcing the prize person sponsorship. We haven't done that. There are a few companies like that, you can actually go and put your prize and crowdsource it. With Wildfire, we have actually asked the world to help us continuously build up the prize purse. So anyone who donates goes directly to the prize purse, and the prize purse goes directly to the team. So we don't get any part of the prize purse. Some people think that because we have $100 million competition, that means we have $100 million, and we don't. If the competition doesn't get won, the $100 million stays with the sponsor. They don't spend anything. So we haven't we've raised a lot of money for sponsorship through crowdsourcing, but we're open to experimentation. And as more people get to know us and know our work and want to support us, we're creating different ways for them to participate and support us with their time, with their funding, whether it's $1 to thousands of dollars or more, or just bringing their expertise to us, being our social media advocates, spreading the word. So anywhere, we want to create a movement of change makers. So anyone who wants to be part of this movement, I'm sure we will have something interesting and exciting for them to do.
So I want to switch gears for a second, just because, I'm obviously sitting here with someone who is so instrumental to the start of the commercial space movement, and especially within the ability for, whoever, for the time being, folks with financial means to be able to actually go to space. And it's actually, it's clearly opening up, and the direction looks, quite promising. How have things changed from your perspective for individuals looking to experience space flight since you flew? Right? Since you flew, obviously it was very difficult. It was non-traditional. You had to go through various means of you kind of had to know someone, right? Ultimately. How do you think that's changed since even you flew to space?
So before I answer that question, I want to maybe set the stage a little bit differently, because my interest was not just getting people to space, but I wanted to create a sustainable, human space exploration opportunity for generations to come. And I believe that as long as governments are the ones funding space exploration, what happens is that, one person gets elected, they want to go to Mars, another person gets elected, they want to go to the moon, and then you flip-flop every 4 years, you're not going to go anywhere. And that's what was happening in the space industry. When we launched the competition, the Ansari XPRIZE, the cost of access to space was around $50,000 per kilogram, roughly. And when you look at it right now, the cost of access is in the thousands of dollars, maybe $5,000 per kilogram. And with Starship and everything else that's happening in the industry, the cost will get down to hundreds of dollars. That type of cost reduction opens up a whole new opportunity. And my companies were born in the internet era, where all of a sudden internet opened up and people could innovate and create new businesses. And to me, what XPRIZE did, our competition was about lowering the cost of access to space through making it reusable and opening up governments to partner with the private sector to really seed fund the private sector. And what we see now is the result of that, which is very exciting. I see so many active companies working on launch system, on in-orbit servicing. And this is not just because of space. It's this combination of with cost of access to space coming down and other technologies miniaturizing and the cost of electronics coming down, the sensitivity of our sensors and imaging going up. So now we have constellations of, small satellites looking at every aspects of changing on our planet and helping us predict that and how things are changing. Communication from space. What I hope will be next will be manufacturing in space. Manufacturing on the surface of the moon, settling on the surface of the moon to get ready to go to Mars, and a whole slew of industries that, I can bore you with, that I'm excited to see happen in orbit, because once we have an active, vibrant, sort of ecosystem in space, we'll never go back. We'll always continue and continue to go further. And that's what I like to see. And the fact that now we have people flying and so many people talking about it, people of different, backgrounds, different countries, the diversity of people who are going and sharing their experiences. So it's not from an engineer's point of view or a scientist's point of view. We get poets and we get artists, and every part of our society now has an opportunity to go up. And the cost will come down. Like, flying on airplanes was very expensive when it all started, but the cost will come down and there will be more opportunities. And the experience we gain from it, if it's anything like what I've experienced and what we saw William Shatner experience, it will make us better human beings and more in tune with our environment and want to collaborate together. So eventually we'll make this world a better place. And I'm excited that I'm here to witness that.
So back in 2004, right, Congress set out a moratorium on federal safety regulations for commercial astronauts. That moratorium ends at the end of September, right? So next month. If that moratorium doesn't get extended, right, it will allow the FAA to come in and start putting in, should they choose to, regulation around commercial tourists. Is that something that worries you? Any ideas or thoughts of what the FAA could do to regulate the industry? Do you think that ultimately is going to stop or create frictions around innovation?
Smart regulations, smart policies don't worry me. Actually, I think it's something that will help the industry. There's safety requirements for people who fly on planes, and if you want to make going to space, as common as flying airplanes eventually, we can start with it. But it's important that you don't create regulation that will kill the industry. So I emphasize on the point of smart. The fact that it is risky to space is not it's not something people don't know. I mean, I knew when I signed up that I could die. I could blow up on top of that rocket, but I wanted to do it. Astronauts know what they're getting to. So the fact that, NASA is flying them, it doesn't make any difference. The risk is there. So understanding the risk, making sure the person who's taking the risk understands it. And if they are okay with the risk they're taking, then I think we need to let the industry continue to flourish and grow. But we can put some, regulation where safety is considered. I can tell you for sure, at least a small handful of companies that I work with who are working on human space flight, they understand that, NASA could have an accident, but government will not shut down NASA. Government will continue to fund NASA, and that things will still go on. A commercial company having an accident is a different story. So even without regulation, I think the companies who are in the human space flight, they are very, very cognizant and very, careful with any safety issues and making sure that they can make this flight as safe as possible for anyone to fly. And I think they do that selfishly because they want their business to be there for a long time.
When do you plan to go back to space?
As soon as someone offers me a seat, I'm ready. I'm ready right now.
Are there any like methodology? So obviously, like there's a lot of ways you can go to space, You can strap
Yes.
yourself to a rocket, right? A traditional rocket. You can go on like a space plane, like, like Virgin Galactic's. There are now other ideas where, you can jump on a balloon ride, to the stratosphere, where you're not technically in space, but you're high up enough that you could get parts of the sort of that overview effect. What do you think of those various methodologies of space flight that are being created and innovated on right now?
I love it. I love it. And I hope they all continue on, and I want to experience them all, because not everyone would strap themselves to a rocket to go to space. So creating different opportunities depending on people's desire, risk tolerance, physical abilities is very important. I had to train for more than 9 months in Star City to get ready for my orbital mission. And it was 11 days in space. It was intense. The risks were much higher. But not everyone can do that. Suborbital flight will give you a glimpse of space, a taste of space. It's done within hours, and you don't need to train as much. Doesn't require a lot of preparation. The risks are much lower because you're not going as high. You're going to the edge of space, and a lot of people can experience that, and the cost will be a lot less. It will be affordable, and then balloon ride is even easier for a lot of people to get into. So. I think they're all valid ways of creating that experience. It's all about the experience, depending on who wants to do it. And it will give an opportunity for a larger number of people, more diverse group of people to experience space, which is ultimately what I love to see.
Right. Are there... Now, taking just a quick step back, even just away from the space industry, are there technologies in general? And it could be a space-based technologies that you expect to be developed over the next decade that you think are going to be game-changing for humanity. If you were to make a bet, like this is you think this is the one piece of technology you think that is going to be developed over the next 10 years or so that you think will be game-changing for us.
So I think a set of technologies that will be game-changing, that impacts every industry almost, is, of course, AI and quantum computing. I feel like, as we've already seen, even though people in the AI business, and I've been in this business for many decades, they've seen AI develop. So it wasn't like a surprise. It wasn't like something that just happened overnight. But it sort of has opened itself up to the public because it created interface point for the public to play with. And they're all fascinated. And then now, just like, again, going back to my internet era, how as soon as Netscape and those browsers came by where people could actually access in a more user-friendly way the internet, everyone started creating businesses. I'm seeing the same thing happen with large language model and Chat GPT and all sorts of different things that are coming out, and generative AI. So, and then quantum computing will just notch this up another degree with miniaturization of chipsets and the abilities of these chipsets going up. So I think technology in general will change the way healthcare works, food systems work, transportation works, manufacturing works. So you name it. We'll see our world changing much faster in ways that, I think if we come back and have this conversation 20, 30 years from now, in some areas of work, things will be unrecognizable. I am super excited about, of course, the impact on health, impact on, creating more equity in society, hopefully, because we can go the other direction. It can create even a bigger gap in society, which would be a shame, and I don't think it will be sustainable. But it can close that gap and bring people closer together. With new material we can create that will bring costs of things down to make it affordable, to make drugs and treatments affordable, for us to get to the root cause of some of our illnesses, for people to live longer, healthier lives. So all of these things, as long as it's equitable, it's a great thing for the world. And we need to work very, very hard to make sure that we don't forget that aspect of technology. And we don't need to, put our heads in the sand and not see the bad aspects of technology. We need to be aware of them. We need to put them in front of us. We need to deal with them. We need to have smart policies and regulations to deal with them. We need to collaborate. And if we do all of that, we'll have a beautiful future for our children and grandchildren and generations to come.
I have so many more questions, but you just ended in such a beautiful way. I feel like it's like maybe we should end with that very, very positive note. I have to ask you, Anousheh, what do you do for fun? Like, so obviously you're out there, innovating on a variety of different industries and verticals, doing really cool things. But like, what do you do for fun when you have a spare minute?
Yeah. It depends how much time I have, but I love music. So music lifts me up. And when no one's watching, I dance to the music. I call it dancing. Others may not call that dancing. I love nature. I love hiking. So if I have a little bit more time, the first thing I do, I head out and go on a walk. I go on hikes. And if I have few more days, I'll go to national parks. I love the national parks. So that's what I do for fun. And sci-fi, if there's good sci-fi movies or books, I love that.
That's great. Any sci-fi movies that are number one on your list?
Well, I'm a Star Trek fan, not a Star Wars fan, because I keep saying that XPRIZE wants to build a Star Trek future where we're all of our needs are taken care of, and all we want to do is explore and learn. So I love those series. I am enjoying watching Foundation. I love For All Humankind series on Apple. Mm-hmm. So
that's a great one. I love that one too. Well, Anousheh, I really appreciate you being on the show. This is great, and very excited to see how XPRIZE continues to do some really cool things. If there are any companies that are interested or folks that are interested in getting involved, what's the best way for them to get in contact with the team?
Please reach out to us through XPRIZE, XPRIZE.org. And my email is always available, Anousheh, my first name, at xprize.org. And I'll be your traffic cop to connect you with the right people. But the best way is to do it through the website and just go out there and send us a note and tell us how you want to get involved with us.
Amazing. Thank you, Anousheh. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you.